and give a true verdict according to the evidence?
We do.
Please be seated.
With the jury selected, the trial is ready to begin. In both civil and criminal trials, you will hear testimony from the people who have knowledge of the facts in the case, the witnesses. But first, you'll hear from both sides' attorneys.
Thank you, Your Honor. This case is about an accident caused by the defendant. An accident that was no fault of the plaintiff.
This is called the opening statement. The side bringing the suit or making the charges goes first. The defendant's attorney then gets an opportunity to outline their case.
As is always the situation, there are two sides to every story. This case is no exception. From the evidence the defense...
It's important to keep in mind that the opening statement is not evidence in itself. Rather, it is simply an overview of the case that the attorneys will be presenting. Some items of evidence are physical exhibits. These are introduced and explained by the party who is offering them. Then they are labeled by the clerk. You'll probably be invited to examine them during the trial. But most of the evidence will be in the form of testimony from witnesses. Both sides are allowed to call witnesses and to question the opposition's witnesses.
Ms. Thompson, do you own a cafe at the corner of Oak and Main Streets?
Yes, sir.
Have you had the opportunity to observe the traffic pattern at that intersection at or around 1:30 in the afternoon on a weekday?
Yes, sir, all the time. That's the time I'm usually coming back from my walk after lunch.
It's a messy intersection, isn't it? With people constantly trying to beat the light.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading the witness.
Please approach the bench.
Now that's something you may see a lot of. The attorney on one side may ask or state something that the other attorney thinks is unfair. So you'll hear objection, and the judge may often call the attorneys up to explain themselves in private rather than letting a disagreement affect the jury. Depending on what the judge decides, you might hear the rest of that testimony because the objection was overruled, or you might hear something like this.
Objection sustained. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please disregard the characterization of the intersection in the previous question. Counselor, you may continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Thompson, in your own words, could you describe the amount of traffic at that time of day?
Not only should you listen carefully to what each witness is saying, you should watch carefully as well.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will.
Take the stand, please.
Mannerisms and expressions might tell you how confident the witness is about what he or she is saying.
Dr. Ryan, I direct your attention to what has been marked for identification as Plaintiff's Exhibit 5. Do you recognize it?
Yes, that's a larger version of a drawing I did for the police right after the accident.
And does Plaintiff's Exhibit 5 accurately depict the location of the two cars in the intersection at the time you observed them?
Yes, the blue rectangle shows where the blue car was, and the red rectangle shows the location of the red car.
Your Honor, Plaintiff moves Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 in evidence.
Nothing further of this witness, Your Honor.
We've all watched TV courtroom dramas. The real thing isn't always so sensational, but it's always important. And not only do you need to pay close attention to what goes on inside the courtroom, you need to be careful about what happens when you're outside the courtroom as well.
We will recess for lunch and resume in 1 hour. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you can understand, this matter is important to all parties, and each is entitled to your fair and full consideration. Please refrain from discussing the case with anyone, even fellow jurors. There will be ample time to talk over the issues at the appropriate time, I assure you. I'll see you after lunch.
When the court recesses, whether for lunch or until the next day, the judge will remind you not to discuss the case with anyone else. This includes family, friends, even fellow jurors. You should particularly avoid talking with or even overhearing anyone involved in the case. While in the courthouse, wear your juror badge. This will warn people not to discuss the case near you. If you believe someone has purposely tried to talk to you about the case, you must bring it to the court's attention immediately. Despite what you may have seen in the movies, it is not the juror's role to investigate the case. That means you should not visit the scene of the crime or an accident, not attempt to talk to witnesses on your own, or pay attention to media accounts regarding the trial.
All rise.
Be seated. You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to call Kareem Assad to the stand.
The attorneys in the case will present their entire case to you. Only what you hear and see in the courtroom is what you should use in your deliberations. After all the evidence has been presented, the attorneys give their closing statements.
And I'm sure you'll find that my client did not cause this accident and that the plaintiff's claims have no merit. Thank you.
Like the opening statements, the closing statements are not themselves evidence. They are each attorney's summation of the case as he or she has presented it.
What we have seen and heard demonstrates quite clearly that this accident occurred because of and could have been prevented by the defendant. His actions and inactions have caused damage to my client's property and her person, as the evidence has shown. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have now heard all the evidence in the case, and it's my job to give you the law that you must apply to the facts as you find them. Remember, you are the judges of the facts, but I am the judge of the law. Even if you disagree with some of the legal principles which I'm going to tell you, you must apply the law as I give it to you to the facts as you will find them.
After closing arguments, the judge will give you careful and detailed instructions about how the law applies to the case you are considering and precisely what you will have to decide. You will then be escorted to the deliberation room to discuss your case in full confidentiality. Any alternate jurors will not participate in the deliberations. Once the required number of jurors agrees on a verdict, you will be escorted back to the courtroom to announce your decision.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor, we have. We find in favor of...
It's going on just like this in courtrooms all around the country, as it has for more than 200 years. Being called for jury duty may be inconvenient at times. The legal process may seem a bit slow, but our system of justice is the finest and fairest in the world because of you, the juror.